All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order for May 8th, 2024. Mr. Metz, when you're ready, please call the roll.
Ron Duba. Roger Daniel. Here. Greg Emmerich. David Cash.
Here.
Nancy Griffith. Todd Moore.
Here.
Will Parsons. Here. You have quorum.
Thank you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is our meeting minutes. Any revisions, corrections to our previous minutes? Okay, do we have a motion to accept the minutes? Thank you.
Will Parsons. Yep. Todd Moore.
Yes.
David Cash.
Yes.
Roger Daniel. Yes. And Brian Duba.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This brings us to our first case this evening, a request by applicant Philip Brandon for approval of a preliminary development plan to construct 3-unit condominiums at the intersection of Bonita Drive and Eaton Avenue. Before we get started, we'll need to swear in Mr. Metz.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you. So now before us we have an application by applicant Philip Brennan for an approval of a preliminary development plan. This is the third time that the Planning Commission has reviewed this application. It is to construct 3-unit condominiums at the intersection of Bonita Drive and Eden Avenue. Known as, the property is a total of 1.02 acres. The project will need approval by the City Council for the plan development, map amendment, and zone change. The subject property is currently zoned R4 Attached Residential District. Per the Middletown Development Code, the purpose of the R4 Attached Residential District is to provide for moderate to high density residential development, generally located in the core area of the city, and that reflects the historic urban development pattern in and around downtown Middletown. As previously mentioned, on November 19th, 1979, the City of Middletown's Planning Commission approved the subdivision plat on November 20th. The City of Middletown's City Commission approved the plat on February 15th, 1980. The plat was recorded with the Butler County Recorder's Office. This plat is no longer, it holds no bearing now. The 9 condominiums were never built, and the lot has sat vacant. The purple dotted line indicates where the private street would converge into parking lots to be built in accordance with the previously approved plans. Per the Middletown Comprehensive Plan, the purpose of the mixed-use residential district is to support a mix of residential housing types and styles. It supports a range of housing styles and price points that cater to a variety of lifestyles and preferences, with a focus on promoting the development of new detached single-family homes. Secondary uses include parks, recreational uses, and neighborhood churches and schools. This property is identified as mixed residential in our future land use map of the comprehensive plan. Here is a new site plan that was submitted by the applicant. There are some changes from the very first time it was submitted, the second time it was submitted, and now. Most notably, the access off of Eaton goes straight south on the property, and then the three-unit condominiums face this new proposed road rather than facing Emerald Green condos on the back side. Additionally, there is a 6-foot tall fence that is included in the site plan between the backyard of the condominiums and Emerald Green Condo Association. There are 3 home styles that the applicant has submitted. To summarize, the applicant proposes a preliminary development plan that would allow for the construction of 3 3-unit condominiums. The purpose of the Planned Development District is to provide an opportunity for creative and flexible land development where a base zoning district will not accommodate the proposed development, but where such development will further the purpose of this code, the goals, and the policies of the master plan. The PD district is designed to allow for deviations from certain zoning standards that would otherwise apply if not contrary to the general spirit and intent of this code. As previously mentioned, the project will still need approval by the City Council for the map amendment and zone change, and before the application is finalized, it still has to go back before you for the final development plan approval. I've included the site development standards. These include the minimum lot area, minimum lot width, lot depth, front yard, side yard, rear yard, setbacks. We can revisit this if you would like. I've also included the architectural standards. Please note at this time, if you do approve this project, you are not locking in the home styles that were provided. You are just saying that you would be open to this design at any point in time during this process until the final development plan approval has been, or final development plan has been approved. The home styles can change. Minor things can change throughout the process of this application as well. So per Chapter 1218, off-street parking requirements, 3-family dwellings require 2 spaces per unit. This application meets that standard. Site landscaping, all development in the PD shall be subject to the standards of this chapter unless otherwise modified through the PD review and approval process. Please note that the landscaping plan will be required at the final development plan. The time that the final development plan is reviewed by Planning Commission, it's not necessary at this point in time. But for the minimum for the trees is a minimum of 3 trees shall be provided in each front yard area, up to 2, which may be planted between the sidewalk and the street curb. Each tree shall be a minimum of 1 1/2 inch calipered. Per the Middletown Development Code, Table 1226, notice requirements, public notice was published in the paper and letters were sent to all property owners. City Engineering Department, the construction plan needs to comply with the engineering manual of design. Review criteria for preliminary development plan. The following criteria shall serve as conditions that should generally be satisfied before the approval of the preliminary development plan and zoning map amendment. The proposed development is consistent with the master plan and other adopted city plans and the stated purposes of this code in section 120407B15. The proposed development is necessary or desirable because of changing conditions, new planning concepts, or other social or economic conditions. The proposed development will not be detrimental to present and potential surrounding uses, but will have a beneficial effect that could not be achieved as well under other zoning districts. The proposed development will promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. The proposed development is not likely to result in significant adverse impacts upon the natural environment, including air, water, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, vegetation, or such impacts will be substantially mitigated. The preliminary development plan has been transmitted to all other agencies and departments charged with the responsibility of review. The proposed development has provided evidence of assured access, i.e. access agreement with the neighboring property to the development site upon submission of the preliminary development plan application. That ends my staff report. The applicant is present. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, James. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed approval, please come forward. If you're wishing to speak in favor of the planned development, please come forward. Yes, sir. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Identify yourself, if you would.
My name is Julian.
See if your microphone's on.
That's not.
That's okay.
Thank you.
James, would it be okay if he were to use the microphone here? Yeah.
See if this one works.
Just have to have a seat there for us, and yeah.
That's cool.
All right, how about this?
There we go. That's
All right. My name's Julian. Julian Reynolds. I work at a place called Crane Consumables in Middletown. I'm a quality manager there. Manage quite a few people, about 25 guys who are looking to buy houses and stuff like that. And they often say that there's not enough housing in Middletown. So, you know, I try to talk to those guys and bring them up and say, hey, you should buy a house, you should buy a house. And this development would be pretty cool. It's quality housing. I think it's going to be, I mean, I like the pictures that they had up there. And I'm just advocating for those guys who, you know, something that they would be able to get into as like a starter home. And I just try to mentor those guys. That's the main reason I came out here, they were all too scared to come up and stand in front of people. So they sent me to say, hey, you know, and just put my foot forward. And I think it's always good to have an opportunity for up and coming youth to have an opportunity to buy a house. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed development, please come forward. Thank you.
For anybody else who would like to speak tonight, please use this mic. Thank you.
Coming up for the diocese?
Raise your right hand. Sure. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Alrighty, so as you see from our last update, there's been quite a bit of changes to the development plan. One of the things I'd like to do is thank the folks that I've had an opportunity at the Condo Association to lobby with and just talk to and understand their concerns. There were three principal concerns that I kind of took away after last meeting. The first was the private drive and making sure that we were able in some form or fashion guarantee that their private drive would not be accessed. Another concern was the proximity of the construction to their particular homes. And then the third concern was the distance, having some kind of buffer of some kind to drive the difference between the two communities. And so as I kind of reflected on that, I did invite the community out. We reserved a coffee room at Triple Moon. I did not get any responses back. So I reached out to some of the folks individually, and then thankfully I was able to find out that there was some confusion on meeting times. And so, I was able to connect with everyone who was present here at our last meeting to have a discussion individually and say, what are your concerns? Obviously, as you could imagine, this proposal comes at additional costs, but at Brandon Homes, and that's what I kind of shared with a lot of the folks that are part of the association and live over there, it's never our interest to come into a community and disrupt, right? We are Middletonians. We're a Middletown-based company. We started with a noble mission to enhance this community and to sow into this community quality housing because we saw a big deficit here. That's always been our mission. That continues to be our mission. I appreciate them taking the call. I appreciate us being able to come to a proposal that I think balances the equities as best we can. You know, I understand when a field's been vacant for a very long time, it kind of comes into common use, and you get used to using that facility, for lack of a better term. So to the extent that we can respect that and honor that, that's our intention. It's always been our intention with every development that we do, both here in town and outside of town. One of the things that I had a later call before that was updated. One of the neighbors had requested, instead of a privacy fence, that we do a vegetative buffer. Obviously more expensive. I would honor that if that was something that was of interest. Fence, you know, vegetative buffer, 6 of one, half dozen of the other for us. But they were just saying it'd be a little bit nicer to look at with the vegetative buffer. So if that person's listening or viewing online, we're still willing to do that. It just didn't get, incorporated into today's presentation. So happy to take any questions. Happy to also yield the floor if anybody else wants to speak in favor or against. But that's the status update. I think that was the big action item from our last meeting. That's what we got.
Any questions from Mr. Brandon?
Sure.
I recall seeing there's some mature trees on the property.
Yeah.
Do you know if any of those will be able to be saved, or are they in the way of?
Without staking the property, it's hard to tell. Just because when you're eyeballing it, anything that's in the buildable pad will be removed. To the extent that we can maintain, I actually got a request from a resident to try to maintain the milkworm trees. And so we'll try to do that to the extent possible. But if it's in the building pad or if it's at a fall risk for the property, that comes down.
And then my other question was, sometimes like the new Kroger, I used to live in Westchester, the new Kroger, they would build these berms, right? And often you have excess soil anyway, so you either have to haul it off or do something with it. Is that a preferred practice? I mean, you could build the berm along the, the back line if you do the vegetative buffer, and then that creates even more of a separation. And I don't know if you'll have the excess soil here or not.
I don't think we will. These will be slab foundations similar to the sites that are there. So as far as the production of dirt, I'm not expecting too much. One of the things too, that those berms, you almost kind of cheat yourself a little bit, because if you raise it up 2 feet, the bottom of the tree is bare. So you're kind of, if we did decide to do a buffer, the neighbor who brought that up, and I think it's a valid point, was basically saying, hey, if we do fences, it becomes a maintenance item, right? Not only does it become a maintenance item, it doesn't look as nice, right? And so, again, I plan on doing an information session with the HOA once this kind of, hopefully we're able to kind of move this through. What does this look like, right? And then have them have input into whether it's a fence or trees, having some input there, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Brandon? Thank you, sir.
Of course.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the preliminary plan, please come forward.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Identify yourself. Do it, please.
Dennis Beatty, 1900 First Avenue, Middletown. With the changes that Brandon has made, I'm in favor of it. The only concern I have is to make sure that they are condominiums that are owner occupied and not rental units. And that's what we're trying to make sure, that they're not rental. And I think that's what he has in mind. But I think with the changes, coming off of Eaton, turning the buildings around from us, and putting the fence up, that was our 3 major concerns for the last couple of meetings that we've been here. So I just wanted to come up and say that I'm in favor of this project.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for Mr. Beatty? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Do we have anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the preliminary plan? Please come forward. Once again, I'll ask if there's anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the preliminary plan, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll ask now for those who would like to speak in opposition to the proposed plan, please come forward.
That's me.
Yes, ma'am. Please come up to the microphone. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Raise your right hand, ma'am. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
If you identify yourself, please, ma'am.
My name is Bonnie Crosby. I live at 1605 Eaton Avenue. I have been there approximately 50 years, and I have seen a lot of changes. I don't want to see the trees go, and I understand that this gentleman is saying that this has changed. There have been a lot of changes from what I have as far as the blueprint is concerned. Now you're going to go and take Eaton down through these places. Is that correct? Am I understanding that?
The entrance into the proposal would come off of Eaton Avenue. That is correct.
Okay. Now, this is a cul-de-sac. It has been so for as long as I have lived there. I really don't know if I want all that traffic coming up through there, because there are children that have gotten used to this being a cul-de-sac, and they do use that street as a play field at times, okay? I mean, they play out there, and we all know these children, and therefore we watch out for them. This may not be a good thing for them, obviously. As far as I'm concerned, I just plain don't want to see all that traffic go up through there. I don't know if the street can handle it, to be honest with you. This is, at one time, it was not capable of handling anything heavy like trucks or heavy equipment. And that heavy equipment will be coming down that street. And that's going to tear that street to shreds. Now, obviously, as being a little old lady, I do not like going through all those little gullies they make and all the little holes and what have you. I think that perhaps that since they have changed it to housing, it is an improvement, but not greatly type thing, because I objected to the apartments. I think apartments are something that the apartments that we have on the west side of Eaton, having smelled marijuana for a few years until the police took care of that problem, I have a tendency to be a little bit leery of. Next thing I'm leery of is that are the people going in there, the condos usually are bought by the people that move in there. Okay, that's an improvement over the apartments, because I worry about Section 8. Now, I know there are a lot of Section 8 people that are nice and, they're going to take care of what have you. But my experience has been that since I have lived there, in Section 8, we have a house on the end of that cul-de-sac that is Section 8. And in that time, I have seen more police than I have ever seen before. Now, I like policemen. However, I don't like the idea that these are coming to settle disputes or whatever may be going on. Therefore, I really cannot say that I'm really fond about having Eaton open like this. I have gotten used to having this nice big old field there that you can walk in. I walk my dog there. Kids sometimes will play in that. So this is a change that they're going to have to adopt to also. I still don't like that Eaton Avenue opened up. And it seems like every time, this is totally different from what I had seen before, because it was going to come around and down. Now it's going straight out. I assume that Eaton is now going to be open to all these buildings. No. Come on, gentlemen. No. No. I just cannot agree with that.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Thank you
By
very
the
much.
way, I do think it will affect wildlife. And I know because I have squirrels that are associated with my yard. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the proposal, please come forward. Yes. Oh, okay, thank you.
We're still on the first one.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Identify yourself if you would, please.
Marcia Hughes, 4025 Benita Drive, Emerald Green. I would appreciate it if you could help educate us what this process is about. What is the zoning right now? What is that parcel of land zoned under? Because I really don't understand.
It's zoned R4, which is attached residential district, permitting a single family up to a 4-unit residential building to be built.
Okay, and he wants to switch it to accommodate,
3-unit condos.
okay. I kind of feel like my voice has only been good for the ingress and egress of the situation. And we've also been led to feel that this is a done deal. Is this a done deal? This is what I'm asking you, because I'm a retired medical person. I'm the one that was there pumping your heart. I don't really understand this. So is this a done deal?
Ma'am, there's no done deal. We've had, this is our third hearing.
Okay,
And this is part of a larger process.
okay,
And in many cases, we don't have 3 hearings on a preliminary development plan, so in some ways, this is an outlier in the process. But we wanted to make sure that we took all reasonable steps to address your concerns, so this is, you can't characterize it by any means as a done deal.
okay. I want you to know we greatly appreciate you doing this. I know you got families, you'd like to be home, and you're here listening to my voice for the 3rd time. Well, we've been told that this will happen, and that if 9 condos can't be built, then 5 rental units will. We are inundated with rental units around our property. And the lady back here that spoke, I walk my dog along, and I do smell pot. We have so many renters and the problems that they bring. I don't know if this is any good, but as I told you in our last meeting, most of the owners are elderly people. We've lived in this community and paid taxes in this community for years. I don't know if this is acceptable, but I have a lot of people upset. And they've written letters. I've got 3 letters from Mallard Court who would be directly affected with this build. I have an elderly gentleman in Emerald Green who couldn't possibly walk into this building, write a letter. And then I have another letter from another lady on Eaton Avenue. May I approach and give you these letters? The envelopes I have not opened.
Any letters that you share with the board have to be kept by the city in perpetuity for our record.
And that's fine. They gave me these letters to give to you. Do I give these to you?
You can approach Mr. Moore, hand it to him, or
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead and continue with your testimony, though.
Okay. But we have been fortunate. We've had a quiet, we are like a diamond in the rough. I just gotten divorced. I wanted away from drama. It was so quiet when I bought my condo there. And I loved seeing the deer out there at 5 o'clock in the morning. I know time marches on. Oh, here's another letter. I'm sorry. I just realized.
Thank you.
And I do appreciate the fact that Mr. Brandon would change things around to make us able to live with it. But I gotta say, I wouldn't like it. And I wouldn't enjoy my home anymore. And since I've retired, I really hate to take all my investment out of the banks to move. So I hope you read these letters and reconsider. I don't think there's a lot of space on that property, but I do not want any more apartments. To me, the city of Middletown is almost a Section 8 haven, and I don't want to see one more apartment built, especially around me, because there's a lot of Section 8. And I'm not saying that to be insulting, but a few of you have walked by Emerald Green and you see how clean we live, how quiet it is, and how pristine it is. And we are still working on our properties. So, and in talking to Mr. Brandon, he called a few hours before we came. You know, he said he would give us an 8-foot privacy fence. Well, that would help. But my quality of life will have changed. So I hope you read those letters and know they're from people that can't physically make it here, but they spend 24/7 in their homes. They're not like me who can go out and get around. So they would really be stuck. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed development plan, please come forward.
I would just like to say one more time, if you guys do plan on speaking tonight, please sign in at the front desk.
Excuse me?
If you plan on speaking tonight, please make sure you sign in at the front desk. You don't have to do that right now, but before you leave, sign in the front desk.
My name's on there.
Okay. It wasn't specifically at you. It was just a reminder.
Pardon me?
It wasn't specifically at you. It was just a reminder for everybody.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
Raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
And if you'll identify yourself, sir.
I'm Mick Barnreiser. I live at the end of Eaton Avenue where all this mess has come to a head. For those of you people that took your time and went down and looked at this project, I thank you guys. The ones of you who did. The ones that didn't, you obviously know how I feel about it. I've expressed that. Also, for the record, I didn't make it to the last meeting because, well, one, I wasn't invited, and two, I figured enough information was laid to you people to make a decision. Since then, I have found out I have another map that I got that doesn't coincide with this crap here. So there again, there's another lie. In my opinion, somebody's trying to bamboozle the city of Middletown. I don't need to stand here and explain to you what my feelings are because I don't want it there. But all you got to do is look at the map and do a little math. He's talking about 85 feet of green space he's talking about. That's not perfect numbers, but this green space is not available there. There's no place really next to my house that's two-story. So let's put a bunch of two-story houses right in the middle of a community that don't have two-story houses. And from day one, since I was called about this project, every time I've checked on anything, everything's just changed. I mean, from one time you have a meeting till the next time there's something been changed on this paper. Paper I got's got Bonita up across the top. Bonita has absolutely nothing to do with this project. But we were all told that that's where the main drive was coming in. That's where it first started, and it's been nothing but BS ever since. And I sure hate to see Middletown get bamboozled by something like this. It's just not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Before I close the public hearing, I know that Mr. Brandon would like to speak quickly on addressing a couple concerns.
Well, we certainly appreciate the comments. There are a few faces here that we have not had an opportunity to connect with, the two folks who spoke. A couple of things that I want to kind of clear the air on. We're not trying to bamboozle. This is, all of this right here that we've presented here is a result of an iterative process of us partnering with the community. So if you're seeing changes, these are changes that were requested directly from the community. I understand the frustration. They own a private drive. There's an egress and easement there, but this is a public street. And so.
There's no street there to be public.
Well, it is. You just can't see it on this, sir, but it is. So, and this setup here is not a dialogue.
That would be a
Sir.
private drive.
This is
Yeah.
not a dialogue.
If you would, just please let Mr. Brandon finish his comments.
And so, trying to make sure, for sake of understanding, that we're able to articulate what's going on here, this is just showing the active parcel. There is a street that comes off of Bonita that, is it Bonita Drive? Is that what your street is called?
That the private drive comes off of is Bonita.
Exactly, but what's the actual name of the street that you guys, the private drive? Yeah, it's Bonita. So that Bonita comes and terminates right at the head of this property. And so, whether you believe it or not. So that's the first thing. There was a comment also made too. We did try to outreach, I know, Marcia, to you more than 2 hours before this meeting. I think my office manager reached out to you at the beginning of last week. And so we didn't get a response. And so I bought the actual correspondence because I figured that would be the case. But we didn't get a response until I called today. So I'll provide that just for, I guess the net of it is, our interest always is to outreach to the community. I appreciate the participation. This has been public notice for 3 months, which is, you would have received 3 notices on this. Any change we've made has been us trying to honor our position in the community, us trying to honor our partners in the community to the extent possible. I understand totally what it might be like to have change. Nobody likes necessarily to live next to new construction. I'm hoping that you at least feel the spirit of us trying to partner. So, any questions that you guys have, I'm just wanting to avail myself to you guys to answer any questions. Mm-hmm.
Just to be clear first, so we're talking with the 9 buildings, these are single-family homes, correct?
Correct. Yep. So these are not, and that's another thing that's probably worth clearing up. We have never proposed apartments for this particular site. There was rumblings that the landowner was going to sell it to somebody and try to build properties, apartment properties. That has never been on our scope. We are a owner-occupied custom home builder that specializes in that. And so to the extent there's probably 2 other concerns that were brought up. There was something said that I said this is a done deal. Our conversation was what it was currently zoned for, and that is to receive 4 units currently. And so the done deal narrative, I want to make sure by no means that we say this was a done deal. If it was, I don't know if we'd all be here right now. So we're talking the quantity of units here. So I want to make that distinction too. But to answer your question in short, this has always been a attached single family product that we're proposing.
Any other questions for Mr. Brandon?
Did I also see that it was included that there would be spot for 2 parking spaces for each Was that something included in there?
Correct. We've actually exceeded that standard, and so these will actually have garage units on them, which the current condos do not, and then they'll have an approach as well, a driveway. So we've exceeded that standard quite a bit here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. If there's anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, I'll take those now. Please come forward.
I'm sorry to do this. I wasn't going to say anything to try to cut our evening shorter. Mr. Brandon did finally call Linda Sabo, our president of Emerald Green, this afternoon, and she came over to my house. At last meeting, we gave him her name, phone number, and email address to get a hold of her so we could get the association together and have a meeting. That was why we gave him the paperwork. Instead, he called one of the homeowners who is not on the board on April the 30th. And in that, I'm going to do my best to remember, the plan was to meet on Thursday the 10th, and it said at some coffee shop, but not at one time, and this homeowner called, and then they said it would be at 10 o'clock. Well, Thursday's not the 10th, it's the 9th. And I didn't know anything about it until all this came through, because only the president of an association has all the owners' phone numbers, addresses, emails. So that's basically how a condo association handles business. So I just wanted to clarify that for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. One last time, I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? So at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing. We'll ask for staff recommendation.
So the Development Committee recommended a decision on this application to be based on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. So just to reiterate what the comprehensive plan land use map states is that it is a mixed residential district to support a mix of residential housing types and styles.
What is mixed use?
Would you like to take that question?
In this context, a variety of different housing styles, whether it's single family, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes.
Okay, is that the staff recommendation here? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Did the staff, I mean, that's kind of a broad recommendation, right? That's not a lot to go on. The current zoning is R4, which means there can be 4 units placed on it with no approval other than pulling building permits, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But they could also do a lot split and then have 2 different lots. I mean, there's a few different options that they do have, but as it stands now, they could build 1 4-unit residential building.
So let's investigate that. So it's big enough that they could do a lot split?
Absolutely.
And so then they could have 8 units on this property?
Well, you could have 2 different apartment complexes. But
Two-
then,
2 of 4?
I mean, then we get into the road frontage, and it's a little bit more complicated than just splitting the lot in half.
Yeah, I'm just trying to determine, I think it's important, right? Because we're being asked for something beyond what they can do right now without any consent from the government, right? And right now, it sounds like they can build at least 4 units, can they be share, do they have to be for single-family separated housing, or can they be for, like a fourplex?
Well, it would not be able to be separated. They would have to be one unit.
It'd have to be one building with 4 units, 4 residential units.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's not a maximum square footage on that 4-unit building either.
Right. I would assume the bigger would be better, preferable, but maybe not, you know, to the adjacent landowners, but understood. And the access off Eaton is by right, am I correct?
That is correct.
So they don't need consent to access Eaton Road.
Correct.
Has Eaton Road been repaved as part of the repaving plan, or is it yet to be?
I would defer to the engineering department.
Just curious.
James, I was going to ask if you would, just for process and for the folks that are here, if you'd pull up the review criteria. I wanted to say to the folks that are here, we're part of the same community here. That's why we're here doing this work. First, again, in terms of holding 3 hearings, one of the reasons that we've gone, I believe, into the 3rd hearing is to address your concerns. There's been a consensus among the board, and I think from the city staff and Mr. Brandon, to try to address as closely as possible to address the concerns that you have. Now, there were a number of those concerns raised again tonight, and I think when I look at this project in totality, I think that Mr. Brandon is trying to honor what you're asking. He wants to be respectful, I believe, of what's being proposed here. And as Mr. Duba was referencing, currently, there are other things that could be done here, including for apartments that you may not want there. And what's being proposed here, I think, is a reasonable project to help fit into the area as best as possible. You know, we talk about change, and I would be as passionate about what would come in close to my neighborhood as anybody else in this room. I think that's very important. I think it's one of the reasons why we're here. But again, as we've worked our way through this process, and I'll draw your attention to the review criteria, when we try to bring a project into a neighborhood, one of the things for me personally as a member of this board is I always try to protect the folks in our community. I would never want to put something in a community that I didn't feel would be a good fit for that area. That is part of the review criteria, but it's also a principle that I hold very, very closely. But again, I've had a chance to work on many cases with Mr. Brandon on this board, and you look around at the project that he's done, I think he always tries to work with residents in the neighborhoods that he goes into, and I don't see that any different here. This part of the plan, just in terms of process, if we were to approve this tonight, this is a preliminary development plan. So it'll go to a next step, we'll have a final development plan, and we'll get into those things with trees and buffers and how we want to do that. Again, provides that additional step to try as best as possible to fit into the neighborhood. But again, you know, owner occupancy, very important. For my vote, that's important. Not having additional Section 8. I would agree with that myself. I don't want to see an increase in Section 8 in Middletown either. But again, as we work down the review criteria, and you know, if you look at whether or not it's desirable for changing conditions, we do have a need for quality housing. And that housing needs to fit within neighborhoods in a reasonable form. I think that it does. Whether it's going to be detrimental to the surrounding uses, I don't think that this particular project would be detrimental. And I could go on down the list, but again, I think that, at least for my vote, I think that Mr. Brandon's trying to propose a reasonable project. And again, this concern that there would be apartments, that is a concern of mine as well. Currently, there could be 4 units or something undesirable that you may not want there. Here we have a project, I believe, that is being proposed that is reasonable. So I'll just share those comments with the board. Any other comments from the board in terms of the?
I would concur with what Mr. Moore has just did. I'm not going to go through, obviously, the entire summary, but we have had 3 meetings, and what I see here appears to be Mr. Brandon's efforts to accommodate the concerns of particularly the people at Emerald Green. We have not had anybody from Eaton Avenue here before this particular meeting. Not that the concerns of the two of you that have voiced them are not important. They are, because the privacy at the end of Eaton Avenue, if this request is granted, the privacy at the end of Eaton Avenue will extend into this proposed condominium complex. I'll call it complex, 9 units. But I do see that Mr. Brandon has made significant efforts to address the concerns that have been presented to this board or this commission in the last 2 meetings, and we're not at a motion yet, but I'll end my comments there.
Any other comments from the board?
Well, I think we knew from the last meeting that when it looked like it was going towards access from Eaton versus through the easement, that folks on Eaton would become more interested, right? And that's only natural. So it's unfortunate that, you're just, there's been that change. Someone will build something on this property and access off of Eaton Road sooner or later.
It's excessive.
Another question I had for Mr. Metz is, if they don't have to get a planned unit development, do the rules around the facade and all those specifics, do those apply? Or is it a loosened set of requirements if they don't need the planned unit development approval?
When constructing any type of residential dwelling, whether it's separate between 1 up to 4 units or 4 or 5 or more units, there's 2 different sections for the architectural standards. So 1 through 4 is what we would review this application on. Now, there's certain standards such as roof pitch, doors, windows, plane breaks, etc., that would be required no matter what. When we get into building materials, it's only if it's visible from the public right-of-way at this current time, which I will end up talking to you about later tonight, as we did have a request for a text amendment. But at this point in time, certain other things, such as garage frontage and building materials, depend on if it's visible from the public right-of-way. And this would be a private street.
So the issue is that someone has the right to build 4 units there. They're asking for 9. They could potentially build more than 4 without the city's action if they can do this lot split. They look very nice. The designs look nice, and I understand that the impacts to the road during the construction phase. It would be nice if there was the opportunity for the developer and for the folks on Eaton to talk, just like the opportunity was available to the folks in Bonita. This is just a tough decision. We need housing, absolutely. I'm glad the gentleman came and spoke, because I've heard that plenty of times. And so we need to get more housing built. It's better for the city. It increases the tax base, increases the likelihood we get more desirable businesses, but this project is not in my backyard, and I understand completely where you're coming from.
Any other comments from the board? Okay. I would ask, if we are going to make a motion at this point for approval, if we could just cite the review criteria. Mr. Cash, you want to take a shot at that for us?
Well, I would move that the request by Mr. Brandon for approval of a preliminary development plan for the 3-unit condominiums off of Eaton Avenue be approved, and that the cited criteria would be, it appears to me, that it would, D, promote development would promote the public health, safety, and, well, not necessarily general welfare, but not likely to result in significant adverse impacts upon the natural environment, including air, water, noise, storm sewer management, wildlife, and vegetation, where such impacts will be substantially mitigated. And I'm kind of out of order here, but B as well, changing conditions, new planning concepts, or other social or economic conditions.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Brian Duba?
Can I speak? Or just, at this time, I can't vote in favor. I wish there were more time to speak with the folks on Eaton and see if any of their concerns could be addressed. I think it's pretty dense development I mean, the homes on Eaton are single-family homes, whereas the homes in Bonita, it's already multi-unit housing. And so now it's coming off of Eaton, so it's coming through a single-family neighborhood, or a duplex. I think there's duplexes as well. I did drive through there. But it's less dense than what's being put in. I know we're moving towards a more dense environment, smaller lots, but these folks, you know, I think have valid concerns about too much density. There's nothing to guarantee these won't become rental housing 12 months after they're built, right? I mean, there's no restriction being placed on this property that it be owner-occupied housing. So I at this time cannot vote in favor. Unless
Roger
I'm
Daniel?
correct on that.
David Cash?
Yes, in favor.
Todd Moore?
Yes.
And Will Parsons?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Folks, again, in terms of where we're at in the process for this particular development, this moves the process forward. It is not the final development plan. So there'll be more work on this plan later, and you'll receive notices as we get closer to the final development stage. So other concerns that you have will also continue to be part of the final development. Okay, this moves us now to our next case. This is a request by Zach Ball on behalf of TZ Containers for conditional use approval to allow for outdoor storage at 2651 South Braille Boulevard. Mr. Metz, I'll let you take the case from here.
Good evening. So tonight before us, we have a request by applicant Zach Ball on behalf of TZ Containers for conditional use approval to allow for outdoor storage at 2651 South Braille Boulevard. The property is currently zoned B3 General Business District, where outdoor storage is considered a conditional use that requires review and approval by the City Planning Commission. The property is zoned B3 General Business District. The purpose of the B3 General Business District is to provide for intense commercial and office development in close proximity to the interstate and high-volume streets that provide needed goods and services to residents of the city, region, and beyond. Such district is most appropriately located to freeway interchanges and along major streets. Just to help orient you, this building up here is the old in-stock box location. This is dedicated motivated. They're the gym. This is where Hilt Golf Cart used to be. And then this is where TZ Containers is now. The outdoor storage would be located here, or is located here. The comprehensive plan land use map designates this property as regional mixed use. Regional mixed use is primarily small-scale commercial, office, medical, and service uses that cater to the surrounding residential neighborhoods, with secondary uses that include residential. This right here is just a slight error, but it is, the description is correct, and it is regional mixed use. So if you see here in this map, this is all single family. We have mixed residential, we have the neighborhood mixed use, and then we have the regional mixed use. So just a little bit of property background information for you. On September 29th, 2023, the city of Middletown was informed that by Butler County EMA, an OEPA emergency response to an illicit discharge into the north branch of Dix Creek On October 3rd, 2023, the City of Middletown met on site with OEPA Division of Surface Water and OEPA Hazardous Waste Program. Both departments of OEPA issued notice of violations and sent letters to the tenant and property owner. On October 4th, 2023, the City of Middletown Public Works Department met with Sewer Department to complete a dye test on the indoor and outdoor potential discharge locations. It was determined that toilets in the area flowed to the sump pit in the middle of the room, and it was being utilized to clean out totes. It was verified that dedicated, motivated, and Hilt golf cart sanitary lines tied in separately. On October 10th, 2023, TZ Containers applied for a certificate of zoning compliance and certificate of occupancy. On October 24th, 2023, the City of Middletown requested OEPA Hazardous Waste to forward reinspection dates and notice of violation documentation. On October 27th, 2023, the City of Middletown received a copy of the notice of violation from OEPA Surface Water. The letter requested industrial permit coverage and the development and submission of a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and for the tenant to submit a notice of intent to obtain industrial stormwater permit coverage. This time that has not been completed. On February 15th, 2023, the City of Middletown denied the certificate of zoning compliance for TZ Containers at 2651 South Brill Boulevard. On April 3rd, 2024, Zach Ball, on behalf of TZ Containers, applied for a use variance for an industrial use that is not permitted within the B3 district and the conditional use application for outdoor storage. I wanted to include some documentation. This was also shared with the BZA last week. This is the notice of violation detailing what EPA found. This was also shared in the staff packet. This was a stop work order that was submitted by our Chief Building Official, Larry Tuttle, on October 4th, 2023. On October 26th, 2023, this is a letter from OEPA. It's a notice of violation detailing their findings. This was also included in the staff packet. Also included the certificate of zoning compliance, which is denied. And then April 26, 2024, it's a reissuance of a notice of violation. This is from OEPA Surface Water, stating that they've still not been, had their violation rectified. I included the previous documents because this does directly affect the outdoor storage. In the upcoming photos, you will see that the outdoor storage is located behind this building. It has been operating there since at least September. This property has a private parking lot catch basin, which is located here. It comes down and drains out into Dix Creek and the street here. There is a tie-in point for municipal stormwater infrastructure, and then the private manhole structures are over here. This is where OEPA took these photos, and this is where they indicated that there was contamination into the north branch of Dix Creek. That was traced back to 2651 South Brill Boulevard. Additional photos submitted to us by OEPA. Here in the bottom left of the photo, you can see this is where the building is. This is where the EPA official was when they took the photo. These were photos taken by me on April 30th, 2024. This is the location where the applicant intends to have outdoor storage. I've included some photos that I took on site. This one is still being reviewed by EPA, pending analysis. This is the storm drain that I previously mentioned. Currently, to remediate, they are just blocking the private drain. And then these are the totes that are being brought in. And then additionally, I wanted to include just a photo of neighboring properties just to show you how close this outdoor storage would be to neighboring properties. For the Middletown Development Code, Table 1226-1, notice requirements, public notice was published in the paper and letters were sent to all property owners within 200 feet of the property. All letters and emails that were received were forwarded to the Planning Commission. Members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, you received several letters. Planning Commission, I didn't receive any. The review criteria for conditional use approval. Decisions on the conditional use application shall be based on consideration of the following review criteria. All conditional uses shall be subject to review under the criteria of this section as applicable and may be subject to additional use-specific standards. The proposed conditional use is established as an allowed conditional use in the applicable zoning district. The proposed use is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the master plan and the general purposes of this code. The proposed use complies with any use-specific standards as may be established for the use. Any building or structure constructed, reconstructed, or altered as part of the conditional use in a residential zoning district shall, to the maximum extent feasible, maintain the exterior appearance of residential buildings of the type otherwise permitted and shall have suitable landscaping, screening, and fencing where deemed necessary by the Planning Commission. The proposed use will comply with all applicable development standards except as specifically altered by the Planning Commission in the approved conditional use. The proposed use will be harmonious with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the essential character of the same area. The proposed use will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, and conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any person's property or the general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or odors. The circulation on and access to the property shall be so designed as not to create an interference with traffic on or surrounding public thoroughfares. Additional review criteria. The design of the buildings, structures, and site will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of natural, scenic, or historic features of major importance. The proposed use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property uses permitted in the district. Wherever no specific areas, frontage, height, or setback requirements are specified in provision for a specific conditional uses, then such use shall be subject to the site development standards for the applicable zoning district. Planning Commission shall be authorized to waive or modify requirements that apply to the conditional use as may be necessary to achieve compatible development with adjacent land areas as well as the interests of the community in general where the Planning Commission finds that such waiver or modification will further the protection of the general welfare, protect individual property rights, and ensure that the conditional use will meet the intent and purposes of this code. The Planning Commission may also impose additional conditions, guarantees, and safeguards as it deems necessary to protect the general welfare and individual property rights and ensure that the conditional use will meet the intent and purposes of this code. That ends my staff report. If you have any questions, just let me know. Yes. And
yeah, sorry, Brody Conover, I'm Assistant Law Director for the city. Just wanted to add one thing. As James mentioned, there was an application, a separate application to the BZA. They were set for a hearing last week, but at the request of the applicant, there was a request for continuance. And so the BZA, I believe, granted that, and so it would be considered at the next meeting. So just wanted to let you know where the status was at the BZA.
And then the final thing I would like to say before, in my staff report, is that you're not reviewing the use of the property, you're just reviewing whether or not they would be able to continue the outdoor storage as you've seen. That's my staff report. The applicant is present. Do you have any questions for me?
Applicant is not present.
Well,
You
Counsel-
attorney for the applicant is
Counsel
present.
for the applicant is present.
We'll need to swear you in, sir, before we get started.
And by the way, I am not giving testimony. I'm representing as counsel. If you want to swear me in, that's certainly fine, but I don't want to interfere with necessarily your procedure on that because Mr. Ball is presently out of town on a mission trip in South America and not available to be here. I got engaged on the matter, it was a week ago today. So,
For our purposes and our practices here, just to keep them consistent, I would like to
That's
swear
fine.
you in for the record.
sure, no problem.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Brian Redden, attorney, Beekner, Haffer, Myers, and Koenig Law Firm. We represent TZ Containers LLC. As I mentioned, Mr. Ball, who is our client on this matter and the owner of TZ Containers LLC, is presently out of the country on a mission trip, returning over this coming weekend. Based on that, what I would ask the commission to do at this point, and certainly I appreciate Mr. Metz's report, is I think there is good cause under under the code at this point to defer, and I think there's a secondary reason I'll get to in a minute, to defer consideration of this application until your next hearing, because the person with the most information and facts on this, there's multiple, but certainly is going to be Mr. Ball, as well as his environmental consultant, who we certainly intend to have be part of the BZA process as we move this matter forward. The other reason to defer at this point until BZA can fully hear the issues is, frankly, the conditional use issue is moot. It could be moot depending on what the BZA does. Obviously, if the BZA denies the variance request, the conditional use issue will naturally go away as a consequence of that. And that hearing, I think, is June 5th, I believe, is the next BZA date for this matter, at which we'd anticipate dealing with the substantive issues around the variance. The other thing I guess is a final matter that I would like to make clear, because I think it would be easy for you all to take away that there is some urgency or desperate environmental issue at play here. And I guess I will note, troublingly omitted from the information you've been provided to date is the February 22nd, 2024 resolution of violation of the issues that were raised from the October 20th event. That matter was resolved with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency on February 22nd, 2024, but with respect to the response as well as the results of the effluent that was in the creek. And I think it's important for the commission to understand that what TZ Containers deals with are food product totes, are food additive totes, and flavoring totes. These are not hazardous chemicals that are being dealt with. These are components that go into food products that we consume every single day. And I understand there were pictures of totes that have flammable notations on them. That's apparently, as I've learned, because some of the food flavorings and food additives, say for instance vegetable oil or other oils that are put into our foods, are indeed flammable. If anyone's cooked with those, you know at times those can flare. Therefore they're flammable, so they must be placarded as such. So there's no immediate environmental issue that's associated. Those issues, there are professional involved on behalf of TZ Containers. But what I would ask you to do this evening is, based on the BZA issue as well as Mr. Ball's long planned travel for this mission trip, that this matter be deferred to your next meeting, and either I will be here or another member of my office will be here on behalf of TZ Containers, assuming the matter is something that this board or this commission will need to deal with at this point, depending on what BZA decides the week prior.
Okay. Just point of clarification, this would be for legal. there's nothing necessarily that we would need to honor that request. We could, on its face, evaluate this particular issue now. Is that correct?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. It's a little bit more nuanced than that,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's yes.
But considering that BZA case, I'm just thinking about process, considering that we did continue that case with legal counsel at this point, be in concurrence with what the current attorney here, that we maybe just grant this and keep the process clean, do that first step first, and come back and revisit with the continuous. Would that?
I think, and James can speak to this too, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
One question. What did Ohio EPA find in that outfall?
Yeah, so I am not a environmentalist engineer. I know that, and James might be able to speak to this a little bit better than I am, but I have been involved in this increasingly over the last few weeks. It's my understanding that there are, unsurprisingly, a number of EPA divisions that have been involved in this. There's been surface water, emergency response. The initial complaint was made, I believe, in the mid-fall, early October. Perhaps notice violations were issued, perhaps there was some resolution. I know that they were out there, I think, last week or maybe 2 weeks ago at this point. I believe another round of violations went out. Again, I don't know the exact chemical. I don't know exactly what it is. You know, I think depending on who you ask, you might get a different answer. So he probably has an answer than I have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
I am not.
But does the letter say, when I worked at AK Steel, the NOV would say what it was they found.
I believe that it does, and I
What
believe
does
it's in
it-
the packet.
Can we go back to that? Because it didn't, I looked at this last week when we got it, but the fact that these are food additives, I'm just trying to remember what it was, because
In the interest of full disclosure to your specific question, I don't think either, I'm looking at the original October 20, 2023, so 10/20/2023 notice of violation. I don't think it does specifically identify any particular contaminant with specificity. I think the issue was there was a sheen on the water.
okay.
So,
It was the
again,
appearance
the-
of sheen.
the appearance of a sheen on the water that was described initially as petroleum-like materials and other pollutants.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, again, anything I'd offer on that would be hearsay.
Oh, that's
But I think ultimately the fact that the matter was fully resolved within a matter of a couple of months by way of a resolution of the violation of those reports by February 22nd. Again, draw your own conclusions from that, and I certainly understand the question, but if it were having done a decent amount of environmental work over the years, my experience has been nothing related to petroleum-based hydrocarbon chemicals is going to be resolved in 5 months.
Thank you.
So, to provide a little bit more clarity, back in late September, early October, there's actually 3 different divisions of EPA that came out. There's emergency response, there's hazardous waste, and there's surface water. The applicant had received their notice of violation rectified for hazardous waste, which included the containers that were on site, meaning that the EPA agent went out there, they inspected on site at that day, said, okay, there's nothing that is, an illicit material that has been being drained into Dix Creek at this time. Surface water is still, they still have an open violation with surface water. So that's a little bit different. And then in the notice of violation, it was described as petroleum-like. Now, they didn't list any chemicals that I saw, but they did talk about a disturbance in the pH balance, and they did track it from that site where the parking lot is all the way to Dix Creek, and they did the dye test. They did identify that that was coming from that property, draining into their private catch basin, going all the way to the CSO basin where it's a combined sewer overflow, and then dumping into Dix Creek. So they were able to trace it back to that parking lot. The surface water violation is still active, and it was described as petroleum-based in the notice of violation. So
how did the liquid get out of those containers?
They rinse them out. Didn't you say that? They spray them out back there?
the business does clean out those totes.
That's the business.
That's the business.
They clean
They
and
reuse.
rehabilitate food-grade, large tote containers.
Which,
So, where I think things are, and again, I've got to find out, this alleged new notice. I mean, there was a letter that was put up on the screen, I think, from April 26. Again, that is, I can tell all of you, that's news to me. I have not seen it. My client has not seen it, because certainly I would have heard from him about the issue, given my involvement at this point. So, I can tackle that once I've had an opportunity to review it in full. I'm not going to waste your time debating that on the fly. I can tell you I am in active contact with OEPA and EPA, federal EPA, on information gathering and issues related to this. In any event, I know it's probably been a longer night than you all necessarily expected at this point. But our ask for tonight at this point is to defer consideration until we get the BZA issues figured out, as anything that would happen here is secondary to the BZA issues. So
So the applicant just continues on the way they've been,
they're
continue to add stories, continue to,
well, I can't speak to what's been going on this week because I haven't been there this week, but with Mr. Ball out of town. But I mean, as far as I know, they're continuing to operate and continuing to work with OEPA and federal EPA to avoid any ongoing issues.
But the discharge is blocked, Mr. Metz? Is that what you indicated?
yes, so both Butler County EMA does, wait, other way, sorry. So they have
Yeah.
samplers. They test the water in the Dix Creek. The reason it hasn't gone off recently was probably evident in this photo. There was a stop work order. Roger, but
you can only block it so long.
I'm sure you would need some evaporation.
Well, not only that, but you're gonna continue to rinse those things out. Where's the effluent going to?
Can I,
There is a separate catch basin inside, my understanding in terms of the operations, is there's a catch basin inside the building that the primary work gets drained into. This is, I think, a back lot behind the building with a stormwater drain, is my understanding.
There is a separate storage container tank, like a big tank out there that the interior catch basin drains to. It's our understanding that is at capacity. I don't know.
That's inaccurate.
Okay,
That-
that's just telling you what
It
city
is
staff-
a RCRA permitted
certainly
methodology of, well, I just want to, let's be clear and let's not misrepresent. It is a contained, closed system that is then pumped out, and it's manifested, and it is taken off-site for processing. And that has recently happened.
can I ask, just to be clear here then? So obviously the issue is there are things getting into a drain that aren't supposed to. However, what we are being asked to consider is purely if these items can be stored in this place where there just happens to also be this here. So theoretically, they could not be stored there and things could still end up down there, that's kind of a separate issue.
Yeah,
Just to be,
I think that's a fair observation.
That's right. We're here on the outdoor storage, which is solely related to the containers in the back half of the building.
that would need to be considered whether there was this drain here or not.
Totally.
Okay,
We're just trying to give the full context of,
sure.
there's this ongoing piece with the BZA, there's this ongoing environmental piece, there's this ongoing building piece, there's this ongoing piece before you all. Just trying to get the full flavor. But you guys are only considering the outdoor storage question. That's right.
The outdoor storage would only be like an accessory to the business, which is why the attorney
the
is asking
BZA
to have a
issue
motion to
is-
continue, because if you approve or deny, well, if you approve the outdoor storage of this equipment, but then BZA goes and denies it, then it's a moot point.
And then anything you do is immaterial.
I was going to ask, I noticed in the BZA case, that was last April, not last, yeah.
It was last
April
week.
the 3rd.
It's May 1st.
Restate that. I thought that I seen a letter there from the fire chief in terms of these being stacked. I thought there was a letter. I did not see that in this particular packet. I don't know if you've shared that with council or not, but.
Does not, I have not seen that.
Yeah, I think that would be important to share that with the attorney as well, because that was part of the BZA record. It actually is directly to, it would go to this case. Let's share that for sure for the record. But I did not see that in this particular packet. But again, I think before we go any further, just in terms of where we're at in the process, considering that BZA case, I mean, in that particular case, the question there was whether or not in a B3 district, general business district, that case looks at whether or not TZ Containers is asking for a light industrial use variance. They're asking for a use variance. Council was not there last time, but they did ask for a continuance on that case, which was granted. And I think as you've indicated, in that particular case, that really, it's an if A, then B. And
It is.
so it's conditional, and I think that we should just stay within that form. So I know that council has already asked for continuance. I think we should honor that continuance, and let's maybe just stop where we're at until we move into that process.
Motion.
Yeah, I was going to say, I need to formally close the public hearing. Yeah, seeing no one else to speak, I will close the public hearing, but we will need a motion to grant that continuance.
Can I ask one further question?
Absolutely,
Sure.
absolutely.
Other than the results of BZA, are there any other considerations that would maybe be a changing condition within that time frame that would change our decision or thought process from now until the next meeting? Anything that is planned to be done or could be done?
I personally don't think so, in terms, only thing let me be clear on what I mean here. That, the BZA hearing really goes to the use, regardless of what changes between now and at point 1 and 2, that BZA hearing would have to go through that process to make certain that the use, I think we would answer that question at that point, but.
Okay.
So they need both a variance from BZA and then a conditional use from us.
Right, and I think.
Is there
Well-
legal steps required?
Not necessarily. They could still get the use variance and operate internally inside the building. The conditional use is only for the outdoor storage, which you see of the totes and the tires. That's what's currently being stored outside. So next month you deny the conditional use approval for outdoor storage, they could still operate, if they received approval through BZA, they could still operate the light industrial business or industrial business of cleaning out these totes.
So BZA is for the indoor use, but to use the outdoor storage facility, they need the conditional use from us.
Absolutely.
And they asked, for context, they asked for, I believe that what they asked for was they kind of approached both, it's just out of order at this point. They asked for the use variance, continuance, and then now we're here with it.
Right.
So one's internal, one's outdoors, which is here.
Understood.
Because if we say yes and BZA says no, you're gonna store things for a business you can't operate. You're not gonna do that.
Our decision becomes moot,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
so there's no point in making.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we continue.
I'll second that.
Brown Duba,
Yes.
Roger Daniel.
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Will Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, old or new business?
So at our last meeting, we had a request for a text amendment for me to bring forth to you. This is in regards to Chapter 121003, Architectural Standards for Residential Buildings. The first above-ground story of a residential dwelling shall have facades constructed of stone, brick, wood, stucco, cultured stone, cement, siding, or hardy plank when such facades are visible from a public street. The request was to remove when such facades are visible from a public street, meaning that, for example, tonight, the application that we saw, it's a private drive. So they would be able to have vinyl on the first floor all the way around. This would strike that from the development code. It would not permit it. So the first floor would have to be of a different material. The other option, if you do approve this, developers do still have the option of coming through as a plain development, asking for a waiver, or if they come through to build a home, they can also come to the Architecture Review Board and ask for a waiver as well. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts?
See, I guess last meeting we approved Crystal Homes doing vinyl all the way around.
The street-facing first floor is all brick for the two designs, but then on the sides and the rear, it's vinyl from the ground all the way to the second story.
So they're complying with the new language, because it's just this only covers the first story of the front.
Well, that covers first story all the way around.
All the way around.
So sides and rear. So you would have to do like either hardy board halfway up and then do vinyl or another type of man-made material.
So facade doesn't mean front only?
No, facade just means exterior.
It's all four walls?
Yes.
It's actually tight to
Yeah.
Significantly, yeah.
Okay.
And then that would only be for projects after this is adopted, obviously. No one would have to go back and re-brick their home or anything like that.
Be nice in some cases, but we can't do that.
Do we need to get anything on the record to protect us? I mean, obviously, this isn't arbitrary and capricious, right? We're doing this because it is to the benefit of the overall community, increases resale value, et cetera. I mean, is that sufficient record?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
And as I mentioned previously, and I would like just to say one more time, any applicant moving forward, if this did receive approval and the time that it goes into effect, any applicant still has a variety of different ways to appeal this decision. Whether that's through a plain development, they come through for a residential development, which we've seen every single subdivision do since, I think, 2015, come through for a plain development, and they can make planning commission, which would be you, could make any architectural waivers at that point in time. Or if it's a single-family home that's infill development, the Architecture Review Board also has the ability to waive it or modify it. If the Architecture Review Board determined that maybe they would allow vinyl if there was a 4-foot-tall brick skirt that wrapped all the way around or wrapped partial or some type of combination. There are other appeal processes for developers, home builders, so.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Metz? Okay. That brings us to adjournment. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.